Okay, the presumptive candidate of the Republican Party, the man who's going to knock off Barkey, Mittens Romney, on his, hyped foreign tour, condemned Russia as a, quote, country where the desire to be free is met with brutal oppression during a speech on the last leg of an error-strewn international tour. Addressing a public conference at Warsaw University in Poland, the Republican presidential candidate poured praise on the Polish struggle for liberty and how the former communist bloc country honors freedom. Unfortunately, there are parts of the world today where the desire to be free is met with brutal oppression, said Mittens. Do we puke now or later?
Well, this is now the problem, right? And I think it is important for everybody to be thoroughly educated about the horrors of Romney. And I think to fall into a what can I say, a Pavlovian reaction where
that's what it is.
You think you know everything, and Obama's the only evil in town. That's very, very naive, right? And I can see some people, unfortunately, doing that. So you gotta fixate for a moment now the full horrors of Romney, and that's more or less what you saw. His love-in with Netanyahu indicates, if anything, a greater subservience and a greater adventurism than what we've seen under Obama. I mean, we have to thank our lucky stars. Yeah. There has been real personal friction over very, very narrow, invidious issues between Obama and Netanyahu. I mean, that's been real. Unfortunately, it doesn't go anywhere near far enough, right? It's basically symbolic from our point of view. But in the case of Romney, this is a bosom buddy of Bibi, and that's been so since 1976, since they both worked together in adjoining cubicles at the Boston Consulting Group, right? And we know that Bibi has given Mitt advice about politics. Mitt has given Bibi advice about finance, and there you have it. So that's what we saw, right? The attempt to choreograph this wonderful meeting of these two old friends. Netanyahu saying, "I couldn't agree with you more, Mitt." This is the degree of cordiality that we haven't seen with Obama. Now, at the same time, some pretty horrible things were happening. Right, this guy Dan Senior, you'll remember him. He was the spokesman for the unspeakable, which was the U.S. occupation of Iraq during the Jerry Bremer era. Right, when we had Jerry Bremer as the proconsul, right, this absolute incompetent cretin. He's the one who decided to break up the Iraq army, right, to dissolve the Iraqi state. He's the one who opened the door wide to the civil war that followed, right, basically made it inevitable.
Wonder what he's doing now.
Well, I don't know. He'll probably be joining the Romney campaign. I'm sure
he already has. Most everybody else has.
Yeah, well, Senor, right, when you see Senor, you're looking back to the worst of Bush Cheney, and it's not just him. Senor comes out at the same time saying what Mitt is talking to Bibi about is that if Bibi decides that Israel has to attack Iran, Romney wants to respect that decision. And this implies, of course, that he's going to support it. Now, this is obviously wrong, even at the level of just simple political egotism, right, which you'd think these people would be capable of. You don't want to encourage Netanyahu to attack Iran because it's bad for the U.S. and it's bad for Obama from the sort of demagogic point of view. But no, with Romney, it's going to be essentially we're going to farm out the entire U.S. foreign policy to Netanyahu more than you've seen so far. So whatever you've seen so far is obviously bad enough, but it's going to go beyond this. And on the U.S. side, you'll have a foreign policy which is largely determined by these crazy neocons, right? We mentioned Dan Senior. We should remember Robert Joseph. Joseph was the guy who put the stuff about the Niger yellow cake, the big lie, right? What Joe Wilson went to Africa and debunked, right? The Upper Volta, I guess it was. No, Niger, sorry. The Niger yellow cake story, right? And the whole thing with Valerie Plame came out of this.
Yeah. These are career
Robert Joseph.
Creeps.
Then we have Elliot Cohen, professor at Hopkins international affairs. Then you've got Bolton, right, the great hater of the United Nations.
John Bolton.
With a big mustache.
Yeah.
You've got
he's a nut. That guy.
Yeah, a lot of them are mentally on the brink. And then we've got Robert Kagan of the famous family, right? His brother is the other Kagan. The brother is the one at the American Enterprise Institute who designed the surge for General Petraeus. Field Marshal Kagan, I've always called him. But this is Robert Kagan at the Brookings Institution. So you're going to have a very, very narrow foreign policy base, which is neocons. And then to go with that, you're going to have a very narrow domestic and economic team, which is Mormons. And let's just go through it, right? Romney, of course, his family has been in the top leadership of the Mormon Church for 7 generations, I think the count is. If you have Rubio as vice president, he was trained as a Mormon for 10 years in his youth. So he looks like a crypto
I didn't know
Mormon.
that.
Yeah.
10 years.
10 years. 10 years as a Mormon.
Uh-huh.
Formative years, too. They might have told him, why don't you become a Catholic? It's going to be better, or whatever he is. I don't know what he is, but be something that looks more like your constituency there in Florida.
Yeah, they did float the Condi Rice name out for a day or two.
Yeah, and they still say, and I'm not sure who it is. I just said if it's Rubio, then it's going to be the Mormon. It's a Mormon yoke you'll be able to see, right? And again, the line coming from the U.S. is Syria is bad because there are too many Alawites in the government. The answer to that over here is going to be there's going to be a government where if you're not a Mormon, you can forget it, right? If you're not an LDS, Latter-day Saint. And then I have to mention the fact that Romney, of course, has already named his transition team director, who is this guy, former Governor Mike Leavitt of Utah, another Mormon, and this is also a multi-generational Mormon family. Remember the Mountain Meadows Massacre of 1857?
No.
This is where Brigham Young,
oh yes,
the church was founded by Joseph Smith
yes.
in the 1830s. By 1844, with the assassination of Joseph Smith, it passed into there was a power struggle, but then Brigham Young, the guy who led the Mormons out to Salt Lake City, a hardened traitor, a racist, a misogynist. I mean, we'll have a lot to say about him, too. They named their university after this guy. But all of this going on, right? Brigham Young, in 1857, ordered the secession of Utah, that Utah was going to be an independent country, not part of the United States. It was going to be very big. It was going to be the whole territory between the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada, right? This was the state of Deseret. This was going to be a satellite of the British Empire to break up the United States, right? It's part of the same strategy that saw the Confederate States of America being backed by Lord Palmerston, Lord Russell, and other British diplomats and other British operatives. But in the middle of all that, Brigham Young put out this decree saying, no more settlers, right? No more pioneers. No more wagon trains. Can't come through here. Forget the Oregon Trail. Forget the Santa Fe Trail. Forget the Overland Trail. Forget the Mormon Trail. Forget all of it. We're blocking you, right? And don't think that you'll be able to send your transcontinental railroad through here. And he did allow the telegraph to go through, but then he tapped it. He tapped everything that went through. So if the president in Washington was sending something to the governor of California, Brigham Young was tapping into these secret communications. Anyway, Brigham Young ordered the massacre of 140 pioneers, right?
120 men, women, and children.
Yeah.
Let the children under the age of 7 survive.
Yeah, the ones who were considered to be too young to tell the story.
That's right.
Because the idea was the Mormons wanted to blame it on Indians. It was not Indians. It was Mormons.
And the only reason the annihilation order was given because the Mormons thought that they had been bagged as being white. They didn't want that word out there. Their Indian cover was blown.
Yeah, it's more complicated than this because it's an attempt to block the the path of these pioneers.
They were from Arkansas, most of the immigrants.
Yeah, it's called the Fancher Party.
Right.
And it's a group of 7 or 8 Arkansas families. Very interesting, and I'm sure it'll be interesting for people in Arkansas to be reminded of this. This guy, Governor Levitt former Governor Levitt of Utah, who is now the transition team director for Romney, he's the one passing out all the plum jobs in the Plum Book. He is a direct lineal descendant of another Levitt who was part of the death squad that killed these 120 or 140 people from
sure.
Arkansas. And he's also done what he could to cover up for his deceased precursor back there.
They left all the bodies out for the animals to ravage, so there would be nothing left. No graveyard.
Right. And this is the time. Very interesting fact. The first time a president of the United States ever said the word terrorism was President James Buchanan. Not a good guy, but still, this is what he said when he got the word of Brigham Young declaring the independence of this Deseret or Utah Territory or whatever Brigham Young, was calling it at the time. There's a proclamation from President Buchanan where he says, "This is a strange system of terrorism that the Mormons have imposed in these lands." That's the first time an American president ever said terrorism, and it applied to Mormons. So I think Romney actually, he says, "I love my faith, I love my faith." A lot of people are going to wonder, what's to love? Is this what you love, the Mountain Meadows Massacre? And this is only the beginning, right? I mean, it scratches the surface of
exactly
of what went on. So
that's an important historical event.
It is. Bishop Romney, he's a bishop, has a tradition. We should know about his tradition. Voters have a right to know.
All right, Webster, thank you. Excellent update as always.
Okay, and people want to watch Tarpley.net and Webster G. Tarpley on Twitter. But on Tarpley.net, you want to find out more about the Mormons. There'll be ways to do that coming up soon. Coming up this month, before our next talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Webster.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Webster Tarpley, you can see his work on Press TV, and a couple of those videos are in our about 6th news block right now. Okay, the presumptive candidate of the Republican Party, the man who's going to knock off Barkey, Mittens Romney, on his, hyped foreign tour, condemned Russia as a, quote, country where the desire to be free is met with brutal oppression during a speech on the last leg of an error-strewn international tour, addressing a public conference.
This is now the problem, right? And I think it is important for everybody to be thoroughly educated about the horrors of Romney. And I think to fall into a a Pavlovian reaction where
that's what it is.
You think you know everything, and Obama's the only evil in town. That's very, very naive, right? And I can see some people, unfortunately, doing that. So you got hideous issues between Obama and Netanyahu. I mean, that's been real. Unfortunately, it doesn't go anywhere near far enough, right? It's basically symbolic from our point of view. But in the case of Romney, this is a bosom buddy of Bibi, and that's been so since 1976, since they both worked together in adjoining cubicles at the Boston Consulting Group, right? And we know that Bibi has given Mitt...
at Warsaw University in Poland, the Republican presidential candidate poured praise on the Polish struggle for liberty and how the former communist bloc country honors freedom. Unfortunately, there are parts of the world today where the desire to be free is met with brutal oppression, said Mittens. Do we puke now or later?
Well, this fixate for a moment now the full horrors of Romney, and that's more or less what you saw. His love-in with Netanyahu indicates, if anything, a greater subservience and a greater adventurism than what we've seen under Obama. I mean,
no question.
Thank our lucky stars. Yeah. There has been real personal friction over very, very narrow